For the past 6 months, my marriage to Sarah had turned into something unrecognizable. What was once a union based on love and mutual respect had become a constant battlefield. Sarah, who had always been sweet and understanding, had become verbally abusive. Any minor disagreement turned into a heated argument, where she didn't hesitate to insult and belittle me. I tried everything to avoid conflict, but nothing seemed to work. Coming home felt like walking through a minefield, never knowing when the next explosive would go off. The tension was unbearable. To preserve my sanity, I started avoiding Sarah. I'd come home late from work and leave early, finding any excuse to stay out as much as possible. Yet every encounter felt like an impending storm. One of those nights, trying to escape the turmoil at home, I found myself at a restaurant, dining alone. As I ate, I couldn't help but overhear a conversation at the table next to me. Two men were discussing their romantic escapades, and one mentioned Sarah's name. My heart stopped for a moment. I heard him say clearly, "Sarah is seeing another guy. She's dating Mike, her husband's best friend." It's a real low blow. The revelation hit me like a punch to the gut. I felt the ground disappear beneath my feet. Confused and devastated, I started doubting my own perceptions. Was I imagining things? I decided I needed more information before confronting Sarah. The feeling of betrayal and anger mixed with confusion left me in a constant state of anxiety. I needed to uncover the truth, even if it meant facing the worst possible scenario. That night marked the beginning of a painful journey, where every step was a test of my emotional strength. I didn't know what I would find, but one thing was certain: my life would never be the same. What I discovered could destroy everything I thought was true, but the uncertainty was even more unbearable. I needed answers and was willing to do whatever it took to get them. How will this dynamic change the course of John's life? Keep watching to find out. If you like following stories, reports, and surprising revelations seen on Reddit, subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. That night, as I drove back home, my mind was in turmoil. The revelation at the restaurant echoed in my thoughts, repeating like an endless nightmare. The fact that Sarah was having an affair with my best friend, Mike, was something I couldn't simply accept. I needed proof, something concrete to confirm or refute that terrible accusation. In the following days, my paranoia grew. Every move Sarah made seemed suspicious. Every message on her phone seemed loaded with hidden meanings. I started observing more closely, trying to notice any sign that something was wrong. However, I knew this wasn't enough. I needed real proof, something that would allow me to confront the truth head-on. I decided to install a tracking app on Sarah's phone. It was a drastic measure, previously unthinkable, but the situation called for extreme actions. The app allowed me to see her messages, calls, and location in real time. I felt guilty invading her privacy, but the need to know the truth outweighed any remorse. Every night, as Sarah slept, I reviewed the data, looking for any clue. It was on a Friday night that my suspicions began to solidify. Sarah received a message from Mike, "See you tomorrow at 2 p.m. Can't wait to be with you." My heart raced. It was the confirmation I dreaded. The message left no doubt about their relationship. The pain of discovering this betrayal was overwhelming, but it also brought brutal clarity. I needed to confront reality. The next day, I followed Sarah to the location where she and Mike had agreed to meet. I parked my car at a safe distance and watched as they hugged and laughed, as if I didn't exist. The scene was surreal, like watching a horror movie from which I couldn't escape. Every laugh, every touch was a knife to my heart. Confused and desperate, I began questioning everything. How did this happen? Where did our marriage go wrong? As I watched, a storm of emotions consumed me. Anger, sadness, betrayal, and a deep sense of loss. The person I loved and trusted most in the world had betrayed me in the worst way possible. And my best friend, someone I considered a brother, was complicit in it all. When I returned home that night, my body was exhausted, but my mind was on high alert. I knew I needed more evidence, something irrefutable. I decided to continue investigating, gathering every piece of proof I could find. With each new discovery, reality became clearer and more painful. My life, as I knew it, was crumbling before my eyes. How will John handle this shocking discovery? Don't miss the next chapter to find out how this story of betrayal and despair unfolds. Discovering the affair between Sarah and Mike was a devastating blow, but it also gave me the determination I needed to uncover the whole truth. In the following days, my life turned into a secret investigation. I monitored Sarah's movements with meticulous precision, using the tracking app installed on her phone to follow her every step. Nights were the hardest. While Sarah slept beside me, I combed through the messages and calls logged in the app. Each new discovery was a dagger to the heart. The messages exchanged between her and Mike were intimate and full of promises of future meetings. Each word, each expression of affection, corroded me inside. It was like living in a nightmare from which I couldn't wake up. Every day, my anger and frustration grew. At work, I struggled to maintain composure, trying not to let the storm inside me show. My colleagues noticed my change in behavior, but I couldn't share the truth with anyone yet. I needed concrete proof before making any drastic decisions. The feeling of betrayal and the need for justice guided my every move. One night, while Sarah was in the shower, I took the opportunity to review the messages again. I discovered that she and Mike had arranged a meeting at a motel in the neighboring town. The confirmation of the infidelity was as clear as day. I decided it was time to confront Mike and get the truth directly from the source. The next day, I went to his work and waited in the parking lot. When he appeared, my heart was pounding uncontrollably. "We need to talk," I said with a firm voice, though inside I was crumbling. Mike tried to dodge, but I insisted. "I know about you and Sarah. I want to hear the truth from your mouth." He hesitated, fear visible in his eyes. Finally, he confessed, trying to justify his actions with empty excuses. The anger burned inside me, but I knew I had to stay calm to use this confession to my advantage. I returned home with a mix of relief and pain. I had the proof I needed, but it didn't lessen the betrayal. That night, while Sarah slept peacefully, I began planning my next moves. I knew I needed to protect my interests and prepare for the legal battle ahead. Their betrayal had not only broken my heart, but also forced me to rethink my entire life. The next step was to consult a lawyer. I wanted to ensure I was protected legally before confronting Sarah directly. The lawyer was shocked by the amount of evidence I had gathered. "We have a solid case," he said, assuring me that we could proceed with the separation plans and the protection of my assets. I felt a mix of sadness and determination as I thought about what lay ahead. As the investigation continued, each new piece of evidence reinforced my decision. Sarah's calls to Mike were frequent, and their meetings became increasingly bold. Through the app, I tracked a series of rendezvous and dinners that occurred while I was at work. The feeling of despair and helplessness grew, but it also strengthened my resolve to act. I decided to follow Sarah to the motel where she and Mike would meet. I parked the car in a discreet spot and watched from a distance. Seeing my wife enter that place with another man was a devastating experience, but also a final confirmation of the betrayal. The emotions swirled inside me, and I knew I was about to face the hardest moment of my life. Will John be able to gather all the necessary evidence and confront Sarah and Mike with the truth? Don't miss the next chapter to find out how this story of betrayal and determination unfolds. With the evidence in hand, I was ready for the confrontation. Every piece of proof, every exchanged message, every clandestine meeting recorded by the tracking app were all weapons in my arsenal. I knew I had to play my cards wisely, and the moment to expose the truth was rapidly approaching. The next morning, I pretended to follow my usual routine. Sarah suspected nothing, continuing with her carefree behavior. As we had breakfast, I watched her every move, every fake smile. My determination solidified. I went to work, but my mind was occupied with preparations for the big confrontation. During lunch, I decided to confront Mike at work. I waited for him to step out for a break and approached him in the parking lot. "We need to talk," I said, trying to control the anger burning inside me. He tried to dodge, but I was direct. "I know about you and Sarah. I have all the proof." The shock on his face was evident. He tried to justify himself, stammering pathetic excuses about how it was all a mistake. My voice remained firm as I said, "No point in lying. I know everything, and I'm willing to take this to the end." Mike tried to calm the situation, suggesting we talk it out, but I didn't want to hear more excuses. "You destroyed my trust. Now let's see how you deal with the consequences." I left him there, terrified of what was coming. I returned home with a clear plan in mind. When Sarah arrived from work, I had already set the stage for the confrontation. I spread all the evidence on the living room table, printed messages, photos of their meetings, logs from the tracking app. She walked in, and upon seeing the table, her face went pale. "What is this, John?" she asked, her voice trembling. This is proof of your betrayal, I replied coldly. All these messages, all these meetings with Mike. I thought you were different, but I was wrong. Sarah tried to deny it, but the evidence was undeniable. You can't deny what you did. I know everything, and now we will deal with this once and for all. The tension in the room was palpable. Sarah began to cry, begging for forgiveness. I was confused, John. It was a mistake, a moment of weakness, she said through sobs. But I didn't want to hear more excuses. A mistake? This isn't just a mistake, Sarah. This is a betrayal. You destroyed our family. My voice was filled with pain and anger. Now let's deal with the consequences. I took out the DNA test results and threw them on the table. This is confirmation that Emily is not my biological daughter. You destroyed not just our relationship, but also the trust one had in our family. Sarah was in shock, unable to speak. How could you do this? I asked, my voice full of emotion. I loved you, trusted you, and you stabbed me in the back. The confrontation was just beginning. I decided it was time to involve our family so that everyone knew the truth. I called my parents and Sarah's parents, asking them to come over immediately. We have something important to discuss, I said, giving few details. They arrived quickly, and soon the room was filled with tension. I explained the entire situation, showing the evidence and the DNA test results. Sarah's parents were in shock, while my parents supported me, visibly outraged by the betrayal. This is unacceptable, my father said firmly. Sarah, you destroyed John's trust and all of ours. Sarah's parents tried to defend her, but the evidence was too clear to ignore. Now we will deal with the legal consequences of this, I declared. I've already consulted a lawyer, and we're starting the separation proceedings. Sarah, you're leaving this house today. Sarah tried to protest, but I was resolute. There is no place for you here anymore. Our relationship is over. The pain in her voice as she begged for another chance was hard to hear, but I knew it was the right decision. As Sarah packed her things, her parents tried to persuade her to reconsider, but she knew there was no going back. You did this to yourself, my mother said sadly. John doesn't deserve this. The packing process was quick and silent, with everyone watching in heavy silence. Finally, with her bags ready, Sarah left our house for the last time. The door closed behind her, and I felt a mix of relief and sadness. The battle had just begun, but the first step had been taken. The path ahead would be difficult, but I was determined to move forward and rebuild my life, free from the betrayal that had haunted me. Will John find peace and rebuild his life after this devastating confrontation? How will Sarah and Mike deal with the consequences of their actions? Keep watching to find out. Meanwhile, the news of the situation began to spread among our friends and family. I received countless messages of support, but there were also those who tried to convince me to reconsider. John, are you sure you want to go down this path? And Emily, some questioned. But I was determined. The betrayal had destroyed any chance of reconciliation, and I needed to move forward. The following days were filled with legal consultations and preparations for the divorce. Each meeting, each signature, each decision brought me closer to the justice I so desperately sought. The support of my parents was invaluable. They stood by my side, helping me navigate this tumultuous period. You deserve to be happy, John. Don't let this bring you down, my father said, his voice full of conviction. One day, while at the workshop, I received an unexpected visit. It was Mike. He looked worn out and nervous. John, we need to talk, he began, his voice trembling. I faced him coldly, remembering all the times he had betrayed my trust. What do you want, Mike? I asked, not hiding the bitterness in my voice. I just wanted to apologize. I know I was wrong, and nothing I say can change what happened, but I'm truly sorry, he said, guilt evident on his face. His presence only increased my anger and disappointment. Apologies don't fix anything, Mike. You destroyed my family. Now get out of here and never come back, I responded, the firmness in my voice making it clear I was not willing to forgive him. Mike left, leaving me alone with my thoughts. Despite his apology, I knew moving on was my only option. I needed to focus on myself, on my emotional recovery, and my future life. I decided it was time to take steps to ensure I could start anew. I began searching for a new place to live, a space not tainted by the painful memories of my failed marriage. I found a cozy apartment in a quiet part of town and started planning my move. The idea of a fresh start gave me hope, a sense of freedom I hadn't felt in a long time. Meanwhile, I continued to work hard at the workshop. My colleagues noticed the change in me and offered their support. "John, you've always been an inspiration to all of us. If you need anything, we're here," said one of the mechanics. Their words gave me the strength to keep going. Finally, the day of the divorce hearing arrived. Sarah and I met in court, and the tension was palpable. She seemed remorseful, but I was focused on getting justice. My lawyer presented all the evidence, including the DNA test results, and made it clear I was seeking full custody of Emily, along with a fair division of assets. Sarah tried to argue she deserved a second chance, but the judge was not convinced. "The evidence is clear. Mr. John is entitled to full custody and a fair division of assets," the judge declared. The decision was a relief. I knew the legal battle was far from over, but this was a significant step in the right direction. After the hearing, I found comfort in a support group for people who had gone through similar betrayals. Sharing my story with others who understood my pain was therapeutic. Each meeting helped me heal a little more, and I began to see a future where Sarah's betrayal didn't define my life. Moving to the new apartment was an important milestone. Getting rid of things that reminded me of the marriage and creating a space just for myself was liberating. Over time, I began to feel stronger and more confident. My focus was on rebuilding my life, both personally and professionally. Sarah tried to keep in touch, mainly regarding Emily, but I made it clear that any communication should be through the lawyers. I needed distance to heal. The anger and pain began to fade, replaced by calm determination to move forward. Each day, I felt stronger. The workshop thrived, and my life began to fall into place. The memories of the betrayal still hurt, but I was determined not to let them define my future. I knew life could be tough, but I also knew I had the strength to overcome any obstacle. Will John be able to maintain his peaceful life after these measures? How will Sarah and Mike deal with the consequences of their actions? Keep watching to find out. When the envelope arrived, my heart raced. I knew what it contained, yet I wished I never had to open it. The words DNA test results were printed on the front, a cruel reminder of what I was about to confirm. With trembling hands, I tore open the envelope and slid out the papers. I read the words that would change my life forever. "John, you are not Emily's biological father." The confirmation was a devastating blow. I sat on the floor, holding the papers as if they were an unbearable weight. Emily, my little girl, wasn't my daughter. Every moment we spent together, every laugh, every tear, all seemed tainted by an indescribable betrayal. I felt a mix of sadness, anger, and a deep pain that seemed endless. After hours of processing the news, I knew I had to act. I called my lawyer immediately. "We need to proceed with the divorce and the custody issue," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I want to protect my assets and ensure Sarah faces the consequences of her actions." My lawyer, ever professional, assured me we would take all necessary steps to ensure a fair process. Meanwhile, Sarah tried to contact me multiple times. I ignored her calls and messages, having nothing to say to her. I needed time for myself to process the enormity of the betrayal. Each passing day solidified my decision to separate from Sarah. There was no turning back. I decided I needed to face Sarah and Mike in person. They needed to know that I knew the truth and wouldn't let this slide. On a Saturday night, I went to the house where Sarah was temporarily staying. I rang the doorbell and waited. When Sarah opened the door, her face turned to a mask of surprise and apprehension. "John, what are you doing here?" she asked, trying to hide the nervousness in her voice. "We need to talk," I said, entering without waiting for an invitation. Mike was in the living room, his expression of shock evident. "I know everything," I declared, showing them the DNA test results. "Emily isn't my daughter. And you two betrayed me in a way I could never imagine." The silence that followed was overwhelming. Sarah began to cry, tears streaming down her face. "John, I'm so sorry. I never wanted this to happen. It was a mistake," she sobbed. Mike tried to justify himself, but his words were empty. "I don't know what to say, John. I made a terrible mistake. The blame is on both of you," I said coldly. "You destroyed our family. Now you will face the consequences." I left the house, feeling a mix of relief and sadness. The legal battle was just beginning, but I knew I was on the right path. The next day, I initiated the legal proceedings for divorce and to contest Emily's paternity. My lawyer and I worked tirelessly, preparing all the necessary documents. Each meeting, each signature, each decision brought me closer to the justice I sought. Meanwhile, the community around us began to notice what was happening. Friends and family offered their support, while others, shocked by the situation, preferred to keep their distance. "We're here for you, John," my parents said, their presence a constant source of comfort. The following weeks were an emotional whirlwind. I faced Sarah in several legal meetings, each more tense than the last. She tried to appeal to my compassion, but I was firm in my decision. "You made your choices, Sarah. Now you have to live with them," I said, the pain in my voice evident. Finally, the day of the hearing arrived. In court, my lawyer presented all the evidence: Sarah and Mike's messages, the DNA test results, and the proof of their infidelity. Sarah and her lawyer tried to argue, but it was clear the odds were against them. "Mr. John has the right to full custody and protection of his assets," declared the judge. Ms. Sarah's actions were unacceptable. The decision was a relief. I felt as if a huge weight had been lifted off my shoulders. Justice had been served, and I could start rebuilding my life. After the hearing, I found comfort in a support group for people who had gone through similar betrayals. Sharing my story and hearing other stories of resilience gave me strength. Over time, I began to feel stronger. The workshop continued to thrive, and I was determined to focus on my future. The memories of the betrayal still hurt, but I knew I could overcome it. Each day, I felt more confident and ready to face any challenge life threw at me. How will Sarah and Mike react to John's actions? Will he be able to maintain his peaceful life after these measures? Keep watching to find out. Returning home, I found Sarah and Mike waiting, their expressions filled with guilt and fear. "John, we need to talk," said Sarah, but I interrupted her. "There's nothing left to say. I know everything." Revealing the truth about Emily's paternity was the final blow. Both were shocked, speechless. "Sarah, you destroyed everything we had. Mike, you were my friend. How could you do this?" I asked, anger evident in my voice. The family disintegration was complete. Sarah started crying, begging for forgiveness, but I had already made my decision. "It's over. I'm moving forward with a divorce. And you, Mike, I never want to see you again." I finished, leaving them behind, devastated. What will happen to the family after this bombshell revelation? Keep watching to find out. With the final confrontation over, I began focusing on rebuilding my life. I started a new chapter, dedicating myself to my work and leaving behind the painful past. My colleagues were incredibly supportive, offering emotional and professional help during this transition. I also decided to start therapy to deal with the trauma of the betrayal. Each session was a step towards healing. I felt stronger each day, ready to face the challenges ahead. The support from friends and dedication to my work were crucial for my recovery. How will John handle future challenges? Keep watching to find out. If you enjoyed following this story, don't forget to leave a like. And if you want to follow more stories, reports, and surprising revelations seen on Reddit, subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. It will be a pleasure to have you with us.